everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and welcome to week 2 of the Language Learning Mastermind group. I'm excited to share some of my language learning progress for the week, and of course, just talk about language learning, talk about accountability and how your week went, and overall, just kind of have a great review of the week in general. And like I said in the kind of last video, this series is still subject to change. There's still a lot I'm figuring out in terms of the style and content, but hopefully with more time, the quality will keep improving. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll talk about some of my language learning progress for the week. So just starting off, I had a great week in language learning, and in particular with my Russian. So I've met my weekly target for the week of 7 hours, even though I still have a day left because I'm recording this on Sunday. And overall, I'm very happy with the way that the week went. There was a lot of progress that was being made, and overall, it was just another solid week of progress. Slow progress, but good progress nonetheless. And once again, kind of like last week, about 70% of my time, 75% of my time went to vocabulary acquisition. That's very critical, especially at these early stages. And the remainder kind of went to grammar. And really, once again, with the grammar, it's just to kind of review a lot of the just main concepts at a very high level, just to be familiar with them, such that when I see them kind of in context, I can at least recognize it there. So it's really not to drill down the grammar concepts into my memory flawlessly, but just to be exposed to it. But like I said, a lot of my time, for the most part, is towards that vocabulary acquisition component. And I was pretty consistent throughout the week. My goal is, generally speaking, an hour a day, or just 7 hours for the entire week. And I've been very consistent about that. It hasn't been too much of a problem. I've definitely felt motivated to do language learning every single day. And things have been very busy on my front. So I hope to even ramp that up a little bit further, kind of as things maybe tone down in terms of their busyness. But overall, I'm very happy with just the consistency that I've had, and just kind of the energy I've had behind that Russian progress so far. But I also wanted to talk about a couple of areas just with my language learning and talk about a little bit more in depth. So on the vocabulary front, the progress is going very, very well, but it's a little bit slow at times, right? Especially because Russian is a little bit different than English, or quite a bit different. You don't have some benefits of kind of rapid vocabulary acquisition compared to other languages, right? So when you're learning, Spanish or German or something like that, there's a lot of cognates, for example, or at least the words have similar kind of sounds to them, or you're sharing that same alphabet, and so that kind of benefit helps you to learn words a lot quicker and a lot easier. And with Russian, there's a lot less of that, and you're also kind of fighting the uphill battle of just getting comfortable with a kind of just the Cyrillic alphabet. So vocabulary progress has been going well. I've been learning words. It's just a little bit slower than maybe if you picked a Romance language, for example. But I'm okay with that, and I'm aware that it's going to be a little bit slower for me. But the thing is, I don't let that get to me, right? I don't try to put myself into this perspective where I'm trying to rush my vocabulary acquisition. I'm trying to rush to fluency because I want to just enjoy the present, keep learning, keep trying to be efficient with the way that I learn things, whether it's from grammar or vocabulary or whatever, but just kind of accept that there's going to be a certain pace, especially with how much time I put in, with just the struggles of learning Russian for a native English speaker, and I'm okay with that. So it's just something that I think is important to kind of think about, especially in the context of your language learning, is that I think it's important not to rush things. It's very easy to want to just get to fluency, and to just be very impatient. But I think being patient pays a lot when you're learning a language. And so vocabulary acquisition for me has been going very well, a little bit slow, but things have started to kind of come together, right? Like when in that first week of language learning, you really don't know like any words, and so it's very just overwhelming at times. But then slowly, you start to get a couple of words down, and you start to form, albeit a little bit slow, a little bit low on the word count, some sort of foundation, right? You have a couple of words that you just know. You can say right here and then. So I think that that is good with the second week, right? That's something that I noticed, especially on the vocabulary front, is that I'm starting to get at least some foundation of vocabulary words. And the words that were just completely just, overwhelming and very new, it's slowly kind of coming together. So it's a slow process, but vocabulary acquisition is definitely coming along. And I'm very happy about my progress, at least so far. And so next with grammar. Grammar progress is going well, but it's a little bit slow, just like vocabulary acquisition. And the thing about it is that, I think for just about everybody, grammar takes a while, right? It takes a while to get comfortable with some of the concepts in the language that you're learning, to remember the conjugations, to be able to express it effectively. And it's no different for me, right? But my main objective, at least right now, is just to be exposed to these concepts, right? It's not to master them, it's just to be exposed to them such that when I see them in context, when I encounter them, I'm not incredibly overwhelmed, but I can be in a better position to learn these grammar concepts in context or just in the future in general. And so that's going really well. So, for example, in the present tense in Russian, there's a ton of irregular rules, like a ton, and it can be very overwhelming. But kind of what I do is I just, read the explanation and then I leave it, right? And then I'll go back to that section of the grammar book and read it again, or go over the tables. And, slowly but surely, as you read it, the explanation again and again, things become more and more familiar. You start to remember some of the conjugations, for example, or some of the rules, and that overwhelming feeling becomes less and less. So I think that repetition is important, where the more times that you look at something, the more you're exposed to it, the more that you review it, the less intimidating it becomes. The more that you have that kind of just in your memory, and the more that you're comfortable with it. And obviously that doesn't mean that I can totally express all the rules in the present tense perfectly. But what it does mean is I'm more comfortable with it and I'm in a better position to learn and apply those concepts in the future. So it's kind of an important it's an important component to just kind of look at, right? Where you're not kind of necessarily mastering this grammar concept, but you're being more familiar with it. It's getting less intimidating, and I think that's very important, especially at the beginning. So that's kind of how my grammar progress has been going. It's good. It's slow. There's a lot to take in, but overall, progress is going very well. And so, overall, the Russian progress is going really well. Things aren't moving at, lightning speed, but they're progressing very nicely for me, where I'm making progress, learning new words in the language, and, grammar is slowly becoming more and more familiar. And this is where that routine, that consistency comes in, right? There is no, secret shortcut to getting fluent in a month, right? Things just take time. And you just have to keep working at it and just kind of realize that those overwhelming topics are going to slowly become more familiar with you the more time and just kind of exposure you have with those concepts, right? Words are going to slowly become more and more comfortable, and you're going to know more and more words, right? But to get some of those words down, especially if the language is very different than the language that you're a native for, it's going to just take some time. And so it's really just kind of this idea of patience and just kind of steady, consistent progress. So overall, nothing too crazy, but just a solid week of progress, where I was very consistent and made some good progress in just my Russian in general. And so this kind of ties in nicely to something I wanted to talk about today in this video, and that's just this balancing act that is a part of language learning. And when you're learning a language, everything is in motion. There's so many things that you're trying to balance, and I think it's important to think about it, and especially in the context of consistency, working towards that longer term goal of fluency, and being happy with where you are right now, even if it's at a lower skill level. And there's just so many things to balance in language learning. So if you look at the core skills in learning a language, there's speaking, for example, listening, reading, grammar, vocabulary acquisition, and a lot of times those skills are constantly being better than one and then worse than one, or you feel really good about your speaking, and then the next kind of 2 months it's not so good, right? So they're constantly moving, and there are cases where you need to transition and focus on a particular skill set or focus on a certain area that you're weak at, or you want to make more progress in a certain area. And so you can't just kind of be on autopilot sometimes. I mean, you can, but I think it pays a lot to always be assessing where you are, where you need to work, what you need to do, and just kind of shift your focus and move to the areas that you need to when it makes sense. Now, this balancing act, I think, is very important when we talk about having fun and being very consistent with your language learning, right? Because I think it's very easy to get lost in a routine. It's very easy to get lost in this goal of trying to get to fluency or to improve in something, right? Whether that's learning a ton of words over the next month, right? Or really getting your speaking down better or improving your grammar. I think that it's very easy to get lost into that routine. It's very easy to get lost into that relentless focus. And that discipline, that consistency, that routine can definitely be a good thing, but it can go out of balance with enjoying yourself, right? Where you become very obsessed with fluency. You become hyper focused in on the routine. You get locked into just doing this activity, learning vocabulary, learning grammar, whatever it is, and really not coming back to why you're learning the language, having fun with it. It's very easy to just get into this kind of trance-like state where you're just doing language learning, but that passion, that energy, that excitement, you're slowly losing it. And I think it's important, to come back, take a step back, and always just kind of ask yourself, hey, why am I learning this language? How can I have more fun, right? What excites me about this language right now? What's exciting me about something that I'm going to be able to do 2 months from now as a part of kind of all this work that I'm putting in. Because there's been times for me where you put in all this time and energy, and then you're making a ton of progress, but like the language learning process becomes a little bit of a burden. It becomes a drag, right? It becomes harder and harder to do. You seem to lose passion, excitement for the language learning process. And I found that, in those situations, it's always good to just, take a step back and just try to reconnect and go back into balance, right? And maybe that means, taking like a couple days off of language learning. Maybe it means just, hey, I need to, let's go speak more. That's something that's fun and exciting for me. Or let's play a video game in a foreign language or something like that. I think it's important to always be connected and with that balance aspect, to be having fun, to enjoy yourself, to be hopeful and optimistic and excited about your progress moving forward versus being lost in a routine. It's very easy to get lost in a routine. It's very easy to get set in this kind of just motion where you just put in your language learning, then you leave. And you put in your language learning for the week and then you leave, right? And then there's just no you're slowly losing connection with that happiness and excitement. And because learning a language to a high skill level takes a long time, it's probably going to happen, right? Your motivation is going to rise and fall, and as is your productivity and your efficiency. So it's very important to just always kind of try to balance things, especially from this fun and excitement perspective, right? And it can be very simple things. It can be very kind of not so simple things, right? Sometimes it's just picking up a new book to read in the language that you're learning that's an exciting topic, something that you really want to read, or pick up a new Netflix series or a YouTube channel to listen to, right? I think that sometimes you got to reconnect with that passion, that excitement, because that's going to help you in a lot of ways. Make that routine, make that consistency even more effective. I think all this is very important to think about. And on top of that, I think that you want to have that passion in your study, right? Like when you are excited to learn the language, when you're optimistic about your progress in the future, you're excited about what's coming, how things are going. When you do study, you're going to learn better. You're going to have a more fun experience. It's going to be less of a burden. I think that all is very important is to have that energy, excitement, and passion in your study when you can, right? There's going to be days when you're not motivated. There's going to be days where you don't want to do language learning. But the more times that you can kind of connect that passion, that excitement, that energy into the study itself, the better. right? It's going to make doing routines easier. It's going to make the quality of your language learning better. And it's overall going to kind of just keep your stamina up in this kind of longer process with learning a language. I think it's very important, especially at a beginning stage when you don't have as much flexibility to do compelling activities, whether that's like watch Netflix series, have conversations, or something like that. I think even at the beginning, it's very important, and you probably see it a bunch where there's a lot of people that attempt to learn a language and then they kind of quit. And I think that it's very easy to get out of whack with that balancing component. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of moving pieces with motivation, with consistency and things like that. So I think that that's very important to overall just think about. And I think the last thing, with all of this is that, when you do put in that time, when you do put in, even more effort and energy into language learning, you do see the results, right? If you say, I'm going to focus in on getting better at speaking, and rather than just doing an hour a week, I'm going to do, 5 hours a week, 7 hours a week, you'll start to definitely see that improvement. You put in that time and that energy, you will see that kind of multiplying effect where, your speaking will get a lot better. Or, you really focus in on vocabulary acquisition and spend a ton of time, you're going to see those results. But just remember too that, it's very easy also to get burned out. It's very easy to, get grinded down and then lose that motivation and be in the situation where you're trying to find motivation, trying to find excitement, and you're just burdened by the routine, and you get lost. And this is where that balance comes in. You really want to just keep a balance and try to maintain that, right? Enjoy your language learning, enjoy your experience, but also make progress and learn from your mistakes. So it's kind of what I wanted to talk about. It's something that I think a lot of people face. I've definitely faced it. And just remember, try to be balanced in your language learning, right? Try to balance that passion, excitement, but also, how can you, make more progress? How can you be more efficient with your language learning? So remember balance in language learning. I think it's very important. So next up, I wanted to talk about accountability for the week and just how your language learning progress went this week. And I think it's important just to ask yourself these questions. And a lot of times when you're learning a language solo, it's very easy just to not do that reflection. So hopefully with this video, you can just kind of think about it. And maybe even share some of your progress, some of the lessons that you've learned in the comments, so that other people can benefit. Don't overlook how you can also help someone out in their language learning and give them some great ideas. So just to start off with, how did your week go with language learning? Was it a productive week? Was it, were you filled with passion? Were you inconsistent? Take inventory about what happened this week. Sometimes just taking just 2 minutes and looking at what you did right and what you did wrong can make a big difference in your language learning overall for the next week and just moving forward. Finding some ways to be a little bit more efficient, to have a lot more fun. It seems kind of maybe a waste of time, but really just a little bit of reflection can be this kind of big difference maker where you come up with an idea for efficiency, and then that leads you to kind of add 30 more hours of study in for the entire year. So, how did the week go? As I kind of mentioned, language learning was good for me. There was solid progress, albeit a little bit slow, but I kind of kept this mindset of patience, and things went well. And I'm not trying to rush to fluency. I'm not trying to be too worried or concerned that I need to learn quicker, or things aren't going fast enough. I'm just trying to have that that mindset of patience and enjoying the present moment. So, how did your week go in language learning? And then, so next up, how many hours did you study? Was it 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours? Could you have put in more time into language learning? Where were you inefficient? Did you waste time this week? Did you do things that, maybe you could have, not done and maybe spent that on language learning? Sometimes we might think we're really busy. We don't have enough time, but there's always kind of time. It's just a matter of priorities. And honestly, I think a lot of people aren't necessarily massively efficient. And so, there's probably opportunities to find more time for language learning. So was there any time that you could have, used for language learning that you didn't, that was maybe kind of used for more inefficient means? And then also, how consistent was your study this week? We talked about consistency, and so were you consistent? Were you did you have a routine? Did you have discipline? And what was the passion in your study? Were you going through the motions? Are you not connected with your passion and excitement for the language? Do you need to maybe take a day or two off or reconnect with that? Or, are you feeling good? Are you feeling motivated? Are you excited for what's coming next? So, take a look at that consistency, that energy that you're putting into language learning from just kind of an hour's perspective, an energy perspective, and then ask yourself too, how is your passion? How is your excitement and energy? Where is your balance currently? It's important to have that balance. It's important to have that excitement behind your study. So, where do you stand with all that? And so after all of this, I kind of wanted to talk about, the week ahead, right? So we looked at, how things went this week, but, what can we do better next week to improve our language learning? So, the first thing is, how can you be more accountable and consistent with your language learning from an excitement and a passion and energy perspective, and also just the, you know, act of doing the language learning, the hours, right? So maybe, you are not consistent right now. So maybe there needs to be a routine and plan in, right? Like, what's a way you can create a better routine for next week, or just say, I'm going to do 30 minutes of language learning every single night this coming week because I was just super inconsistent. Maybe you are being consistent, but you're kind of burned out. You're just not having fun, you're losing some passion, maybe you're frustrated. Maybe it makes sense to take a day or two off, or to like try to do some fun activities to challenge yourself, to try to reconnect with your passion for the language. Maybe it's to read some history of the country, of a country, or maybe it's to watch a Netflix series, or to listen to music, or just to reflect on why you want to learn that language. So, ask yourself, how can you be better in this week with your passion, your excitement and energy to language learning, but also your consistency and just the act of doing language learning itself. And remember, ask yourself what makes you excited about the language. What can help you to build more passion and energy towards your language learning. And then kind of two more items. What are the things that you need to do to get better at the language right now? I think for a lot of beginners, it's all about vocabulary acquisition, but maybe you need or want to improve your speaking. Maybe you need to improve your listening. Ask yourself, what are the things that you could have done better as well, right? Like what were you kind of inefficient at? Maybe your routine was inconsistent. Maybe there's a better way to learn vocabulary. Ask yourself those questions about, what could you do better for this coming week? And what should your focus be? It's very easy sometimes to not focus on the things that we really need to focus on, whether it's, learning more words or practicing listening. What does your focus really need to be right now? And it doesn't have to be this, super long reflection. Just take 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and just think, okay, hey, am I doing what I need to be doing? And maybe you are, and it makes sense, and just kind of confirm that to yourself that, yep, I'm doing everything I need to do right now, and things are going in the right direction. So just think about how you can improve with the coming week, because I think that even if it's just 2% or 1% of an improvement, it can really make the difference in the long term. And so that's all I had to say for this week with the Language Learning Mastermind group. Like I said, a lot of things are still subject to change. I do want to add some kind of new elements into this. Once again, kind of just expand the quality. If you have any suggestions on how to make this better, or things that you want to see in the future, let me know. It is a kind of a work in progress. Things are pretty busy, but I'm kind of excited about the weekly series, and hopefully kind of adding a lot of value to your language learning. And so, with all that being said, thanks for joining. I'll see you in the next video, and I will also see you in next week's mastermind group. Take care.